You don't need to pretend. You're confused, I'm confused, everybody's confused. It's basically the Malazan initiation ritual. All right, people, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Gardens of the Moon doesn't care if you understand it. It doesn't care if you need a map and training wheels and ChatGPT with guardrails to help you get through the first chapter. Steven Erikson took almost a decade to get this thing published, and it shows. And that dedication made me think, okay, this thing has to be worth it, right? Right? This is the part of the video where I usually dive into like Goodreads reviews and laugh about it, but I'm just so nervous for anything spoilery to come across my plate. I don't want to risk it, and I don't want to risk that for you either if you're in the same boat. All right, to start, let's see if you were actually tracking everyone. There's Paran, Tattersail, Whiskeyjack, Quickben, Kalam, Hairlock, Dujek, Tayschrenn, Fiddler, Crokus, Kruppe, Rallick, Murrillio, Coll, Challice, Baruk, Mammot, Vorkan, Rake, Shadowthrone, Cotillion, Sari, or Apsalar, Tool, Simtal, Turban. Okay, I know I missed some, but geez. There are fantasy books with fewer species than this cast. Fantasy prologues don't usually scare me, especially when they're part of a long series like this 10-book series. Unlike the other 500 pages of the book, the prologue is maybe the only part of the story I very clearly and succinctly followed. Maybe that's Erikson's way of starting us out with training wheels. Young Paran is watching the aftermath of a battle that he thought would be glorious, and he's smacked with the reality that war is ugly as hell. There's no honor here, just smoke, betrayal, and bodies. And yeah, clearly this kid's gonna be more important later. You don't drop a 12-year-old with an existential crisis into chapter 1 for nothing. But for all you Mario Party fans out there, this plot implodes faster than a round of Bowser's Big Blast. So what I'm gonna do is take this thing major character by major character, try to sum up what's going on with each of them from start to finish. Starting with Paran, he's a guy in the military of the Malazan army. He's an officer, and in the early going, he has an interaction with Sari, who we know is later taken over by Cotillion, the rope, and he sees them actually in the flesh on the road when he meets her. He questions her, she's pretty calm. The segment kind of takes this aftermath of battle. The segment kind of takes this aftermath of battle, bird's eye view. He does a little digging, a little investigating. You get a sense that he's working for the Empress, something big is in store for him, and he gets to go see his family one last time before he's shipped out on a big, bad, important mission. And when he does go home to see his family, you could tell there's some rough history there. He's had some problems maybe with his sisters. I don't know, it's just a little ominous. Not exactly thrilled to see him, and he takes it from there. He's sent off to take over the Bridge Burners, and the Empress wants him in charge of that group. He shows up, they're obviously a rowdy crew, a little bit of a ragtag group. They don't really seem to like him that much, but it might be just that they've gone through so much in this big battle, and it could be that they just, went through this major battle, so they're not warming up to just anybody. But before they can even, get to know the guy, they're taking odds on how long he's gonna last. But sure enough, he's gutted out the start. This would be by Sari, who stabbed him, assassinated him, for whatever the reason may be. Turns out he goes and floats his way up into, I don't know if you want to call it purgatory, but he's at Hood's Gate, the door of death. And there, the twin gods of Opon decide to intervene. They have a little convo, a little arguing back and forth, and they kick him back to the mortal realm. He wakes up, his wound is healing. It seems he's triggered the release of 2 Hounds of Shadow. And at one point, he ends up in a life or death altercation with one of them. Protecting Tattersail, he wounds one. It seems he's gonna be reassigned to go on a mission to Darujistan, and he's told this by Dujek, and he's gonna reunite with the Bridge Burners. He realizes in his possession is the sword Chance, not really sure when he picked that up, but he uses it in the final climactic battle to fight. He witnesses fights firsthand with Anomander Rake. He sees him strike down some Hounds. In touching the blood of the Hounds, he actually is warped into the sword realm of Dragunapur, and he sees this kind of dark shaded realm with a wagon dragging many chained souls, which are to be understood as whatever Anomander Rake has struck down with this sword are chained to this realm. And on a whim, he sets 2 of the Hounds free that were just killed. And we'll see how that plays into the future. I'm curious myself. But that's kind of Paran's part in the battle. I like Paran in this story. He's a relatable character. Seems like a good guy. He's an officer of the army. You know, it doesn't seem like he jives too well with his family. I'm sure we'll circle back to that in the future. I think he's a very grounded character throughout. He's not somebody that's going to go down easy, and he very much, in my opinion, expresses free will in this story. He does what he wants to do, and I think that's at odds with Opon. You know, they're kind of trying to pull the strings, but Paran just gonna Paran. You can see that when he cuts the Hounds free in that Dragon of Per sword realm. You know, he just slices them from their chains, and what happens to them, I'm not sure, but what I can say is that's him taking upon himself to do something he feels is right. Tattersail. Awesome character. It's a shame you get such kind of a short segment with her. An awesome Saving Private Ryan type scene in the early going, just like the shell shock of what the heck is happening. You have the High Mage Tayschrenn, however you're gonna say it, you know, raining down friendly fire maybe on them, and you've got this moon spawn, you don't know what it is, and she's just dealing with it all. Getting through the lens, her interaction with just being in this stunned state and watching Quick Ben and his crew just put Hairlock back together as he's chopped in half. I mean, this is an absolutely ridiculous scene. And turning him to a puppet, which we'll get to in a bit, even more ridiculous. Tattersail is the character to root for, and you really feel all these things building with her interaction with Lorn. She has some unfinished business. She wants to get to the bottom of not only like maybe how the gods are meddling in this world, but what is Empress Lysine's plan here? It's so awesome to see her character snowballing and snowballing, getting better and better and deeper. And then we're kind of just cut off because she's hit with the shell shock of the Jaghut Tyrant's, you know, afterquake of magic. And she makes a decision to try to tether her soul to the world still. And now we know maybe there's a lot more in store for her, but she's tied to the soul or body of a young Rivi girl. So we'll see where that goes. Quick Ben's first scene is when he's using his magical ability to take this sack, which you believe has maybe a dead body or body parts inside of it. So he's using this magical power to tie whatever's left of Hairlock's upper half to this sack of bones and limbs. I don't know. What results is this creepy puppet. So you do understand that Quick Ben, okay, this guy's got some high level magic, not just the fireball throwing around type. He's super silent, quiet, observing, not the most in-your-face character. It turns out to be a good thing because, of course, he's watching Hairlock through his madness of jumping in and out of warrens, and Quick Ben's really keen on that. I liked how it was like he was on his own side mission in this book. One of my, favorite parts of the book for sure is when he confronts Shadowthorn face to face. He's found a way into his realm. Again, you're trickling in the fact that this guy is way more powerful than he's leading on. He's had an interaction with this god before. In fact, it seems he's worked for this god before, and he grifts this deal where Hairlock's gonna be taken out. Towards the end of the book, in the final battle, when Quick Ben just unleashes this like multi-warren giant mass of power at the Jaghut Tyrant, I was like, all right, what's this guy's deal? I'm starting to get this vibe that like, is he a god this whole time? Something's fishy about him, but I like him. I like him. Whiskeyjack, awesome name, kind of an interesting parallel to Quick Ben because I don't know, he just wasn't my favorite character. He does what he has to do, right? He leads his squad of bridge burners. I feel for him because he's got a lot going on. He probably felt a lot of loyalty to the previous emperor. We don't get that backstory yet, but he's just doing the best he can to take all of these folks from battle to battle, keep them alive. But what's brewing underneath, I'm not really sure. It may be that him and Dujek are trying to plan something for the future. I don't think like an overall upheaval and overthrow of Lysine, but we'll see what happens with it. Kalam, he's all right. I don't think he's a very shining, bright character, definitely a lesser character. I think his most shining moment is when Cotillion, the rope, leaves Sari's body, and he's there to kind of control the situation. It's also one of the biggest like what happened moments for me still in this book. Is Sari, now Apsalar, no longer possessed? Or is there more to it? Because what Kalam seems to suggest is that there may be another being present. And he doesn't think that purging that being from Apsalar will do any good. In fact, it might kill her. So the group decides to keep her alive. Hairlock is freaking nuts, man. He's freaking nuts. When I see that one of the main characters of this story is going to be a magical wooden puppet, I'm laughing my butt off. I mean, it's just ridiculous, but it kind of works. It's funny to see him shoved in boxes in the closet and he's just like banging to get out, like a weird situation in Toy Story. It's this weird experience with him as a character because you know he is definitely on the higher ability side of magic, but also he's going nuts, so you don't know what to believe. I'm not sure if Erikson's planting him in here to sow seeds of confusion of who the good guy is. We have this wild interaction where he's deep in a warren. I mean down. Like we have Quick Ben, you know, meditating to get an access to how far and deep into this warren that Hairlock is. And there's just like this unsettling scene about him and he's just staring off into the distance, completely going mad. He's trying to figure out a way to access the gods himself. And that is just not easy business. I don't feel that much for Hairlock because I feel like he was nuts before he was a puppet. So it's hard for me to just have any compassion for the character. He doesn't think about anybody else. And that's what leads to his demise. I mean, he's trying to rip apart warrens and Anomander Rake's just like, nope, I'm not letting you play with this level of magic. Whew, goodbye, and takes him out of the scene. I will say one thing that just gets brought up but never really touched on again is his obsession with the deck of dragons. And it makes me obsessed with it because I want to know more about what the cards mean so I can kind of play Nancy Drew, play Hercule Poirot, and figure out what's going to go on later in the story by identifying cards in the deck. Clearly they each relate to some kind of god or action, so Hairlock knew what was going on. That's why he wanted so badly for Tattersail to reveal to him what's happening. Adjunct Lorn is everything Paran is not. To me, not a likable character. I'm sure a lot of you out there like her. Over the course of the book, you can kind of see her character arc. She's starting to say, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Why are we on a mission here to unleash this ancient weapon, basically this ancient nuke on a city? Like, what are we really getting at? But even though she's having these realizations, she doesn't do anything about it. And quite frankly, I find it hilarious how she died in the end. Died, I'm not so sure she's dead. Not really how I think it's gonna go, but hey, maybe I've just read too much fantasy. But to see her go down in the alley like that, the two nobodies, I mean, it's just, to me, it's just ridiculous. You have this super powerful character who's got this sword that can basically repel magic, and she's knocked out in an alley by a bunch of barmaids. Anomander Rake, easily the best character in the book. I don't know if anybody's gonna disagree with that. You've got a dude in a fortress that's called Moonspawn, that's basically the Death Star floating above the city. It's just ominous. It's not like he's provoking or attacking anybody directly right now. And he comes from a race called the Tistandi. Apparently they live thousands of years. I don't know if all of them do, just he does. And he's just sitting on the sidelines waiting to make a decision. He's an intelligent person, does not make rash decisions, has one of the coolest swords, has access to magical abilities beyond compare, can transform himself into a dragon. I'm so like balanced with Erikson's writing because sometimes I think it's just annoying, quite frankly. For whatever reason, he doesn't step his toe into the water until he has to. I think that's honorable, but I think it's also makes him an interesting character because not everything's revealed up front. And I get a kick out of him wanting to wear a mask to the fete and a costume, you know, to fit in with the others and just take fun in the event itself. Trying to humanize himself, and you know, he is an ascendant, so I guess we don't know entirely for sure what that is, but we do know Rake is one, so it's somewhere between, you know, mortal and god. He knows they're unleashing the Jaghut tyrant to lure him out. He knows that he's got to get involved, but he's just trying to give the city every opportunity to do what they can first to stop it. Of course, he's got some of the most badass moments, taking down the Hounds, his interaction with the Jaghut, even though Moonspawn flies away in the end. Really interested to see what he does going forward. Shadowthrone is another interesting character. He's the first one of the gods, at least from a reader's point of view, that makes an open play to get involved in the mortal world. He does kind of have an epic confrontation with Rake down the road, and it's kind of this standoff where he's like, stay out of our world, we'll stay out of yours, and there's a lot to be determined with Shadowthrone. Now on that front, Cotillion, who goes hand in hand with Shadowthrone, is the one who infiltrates and possesses Sari's body, Absolar Sari. To this day, I still don't know what Cotillion's aim was in doing so. I think he wanted to have boots on the ground, and he did. But at a certain point, you know, making the decision to kill Paran, was it because Paran was too much of a wild card? That's what my interpretation leads me to believe, but I still don't know his like clear and concise reasoning for doing it. What is clear is they're at least at odds with Opon, so maybe that's where the tit for tat goes. And then of course he escapes Sari's body in the end, so maybe he has other plans. I really like these types of god characters because they're not just the god of fire, the god of war. Sari, I just feel bad for Sari. She's in the wrong place at the wrong time, interacting with this crazy old hag, Riga, who puts this prophecy to the air, and it just speaks truth, and she's abducted almost immediately after that. In her Sari assassin form, I thought it was super badass. Like the way the character was written, cold, unassuming. Everybody knows something's wrong with her, but they don't know why. And they're all too afraid of her to do anything about it. So yeah, sure, it's a shock when she stabs Paran partway through, but it's a little weird the way she adapts after that into kind of going just like completely plain. She doesn't have any opinions, like, oh, your assassination attempt didn't work. When she's freed of Cotillion, I'm just like, you lost me here. Not out of confusion of what's going on, but as a character itself. This Absolar thing, I find it weird. I find it weird she adopts that name from Crokus. I find everything about that weird. I think the most interesting part to me, even though I don't find her the most likable character at this stage, is somebody else possessing this girl's body or not? Like, I want to know if there's still more going on here. She spits facts about literally the Gardens of Moon later, so there's something deeper going on, and I can't wait to find out what it is. Oh, Crokus. Crokus is hilarious. First of all, I can't think of anything but One Piece when I think of Crokus. And the second thing I think of is like an old man. So it was really hard for me to put the imagery together here. But he's this young thief, and his early scene with him sneaking into Challice D'Arl's room, and she's, you know, not wearing any clothes from the waist up, and he's just like enamored with her beauty, and just, it's so creepy and so awkward, and he's stealing stuff. And it's just a weird, weird interaction. He feels so guilty that he literally goes back in to return the stolen goods so that he can interact with this woman again. I feel for the man, I feel for the man. I don't know why Opon didn't give him some love on that front. I think it's cool to see how all these figures intervene over time to keep Crokus alive. Quite frankly, the way he acts and interacts, I don't know how he makes it at all as a thief in this Thieves Guild. But I guess we'll see how his story progresses in the future, just flicking a coin into the ocean at the bottom of the waves. Kruppe, for all of you Sanderson fans, gives me total Hoyd vibes. He's funny, he speaks so ridiculously, and he's such an entertaining character to listen to. At first, I didn't know if he was just getting wrapped into these strange situations because of the person he is, but actually, like, he's his own version of George R.R. Martin's Varys, just a likable one. He floats in and out, gets connections with everybody through the city. He knows everybody, everything that's going on. But it's also interesting because then he gets roped into the world of gods with his dream world magic. I am so curious how he fits into the story going forward. You know he's got to have a role, but I will say that I did like getting a laugh out of every scene that he's in. He really ties everything in, from Baruk to Mammot to the gods to everything. It's just a nicely buttoned way for Erikson as an author as well to transition scene to scene, kind of carrying it through Kruppe's lens. He's kind of like the handoff between character to character and understanding how the story propels itself. Coll is this character that I didn't resonate a lot with. I think this is where, and we'll get into maybe a couple of these characters coming forward, that Erikson didn't do enough to bring them forward on the page. And I don't think that every character is a main character. I think that some characters can have minor role energy and still be stars. Coll is this guy who frequents the inn, and he's lost this former title and role. And this is a little murky, but I guess Turban, or one of the local politicians, if you will, he had a lot to do with this. And Murrillio and co, they find a way to kind of plan out a way for him to get his revenge. But again, if you're gonna get revenge against this character Turban, or I just feel like there wasn't enough for me to feel even interested or satisfied by the revenge you get at the end of the story. Now Murrillio, on the same front, he's another character that frequents the inn, and he's known for his dueling abilities. That kind of wraps the two together when he gets into a duel at the end. Again, Murrillio, maybe a little more likable. He's got a lot more charisma than Coll, but again, doesn't jump off the page. Tool is a super interesting character. Just the way he literally like comes out of the ground in this mass of like bones and old flesh. I mean, it really leads you to believe like, what is this monster? But he's the most thoughtful, prophetic creature, and why wouldn't you be if you were thousands of years old? He's a great agent in the writing to bring forward the histories of the world and kind of tell you what used to go on and give you a very big insight into the greater powers. I love how he's capable of trying to transform Lorn into being more than she is. And in that itself, I think of the name Tool and how he may be a tool to help transform her. I don't know if that's just my little thing, but it made sense to me. So while it's awesome that you get the backstory of this Jaghut versus Imas battle that's been going on for centuries, I want more. I want to know how the Warrens work. I want to know what Tool knows. I want to be in his head and get all the information out. Dujek, for simplicity's sake, is the one who's giving Whiskeyjack and the bridge burners their orders. He's obviously out to protect them. He suspects a lot of Lucine and what her ulterior motives might be, so it's good that he's this moral good type character in the story right now with so much chaos that you think, okay, Dujek, he's looking out for everybody. Tayschrenn. This guy's, he's a douche. He's a douche, let's be honest. First off, he attacks his own people. He's also snooty in his experiences with Lorn and Tattersail when they're at dinner. I just don't like anything about this guy. He doesn't take major part in the later aspects of the book, so just pocketing the fact that I don't like this guy, and I'll remember that when I get back to him in a future book. Rallick Nam is one of the members of one of the guilds in Darujistan. I suppose I never sunk my teeth all the way into this conflict, and here's why. For me, there's so much going on. There's this giant Jaghut tyrant coming to the city. There's Anomander Rake. There's all these gods in play. There's this crazy armies. Why do we need to care about simple city politics and spying and all of this stuff going on when literally they can all be wiped out in an instant? It's like Erikson, try to pick a lane. What are you writing? Are you trying to also insert a Game of Thrones type Game of Houses story? Or are you trying to set up this empirical takeover book with gods and giants? Like, what are you doing? I know you want to do both, but this book isn't long enough for that. Just extend it. I mean, you ended up writing a 10-book series. It's not a surprise to me at this point why this took 10 years to publish. But either way, Rallick, you know, he's kind of a spy master. He gets involved in the fighting later on. He seems like a good character. I just have no tether to him. Baruk is also super interesting. He's clearly the one that runs the city. He keeps all of his chess pieces to himself. And I think the only character that really outsmarts him in this thing is Rake. They go toe-to-toe verbally multiple times, and it's just fun to watch that little battle of intelligence and intellect go back and forth. Raest, as a character, not much to say. Big bad giant monster, awakened after centuries. You know, he's relentless. He's not gonna go down easily. I mean, it's crazy to watch him get torn to shreds and then regenerate over and over and over again. Really confusing demise, by the way. I'm gonna really need to unpeel that onion at some point and figure out what the heck happened. But at this point, it just seems like a house grew out of the ground and swallowed him up. Mammot is Crokus's uncle, and he's essentially like the historian of the city. He's one of the right-hand men of Baruk, which is important, and he's doing all this research to find out where the burial site is for the Jaghut tyrant, or at least trying to figure out what their plan here is. The irony is that, well, the Jaghut tyrant takes his body over and possesses him and uses him, and then when he's extricated, he leaves Mammot's body destroyed. Turban is this corrupt politician in the city, and again, I can't stress it enough, why do we care about the insignificant city politics when the world's about to explode. But either way, Turban, he's the guy who orchestrated Coll's downfall. In the end, at the Fete, I don't know how to pronounce it, he's challenged to a duel by Murrillio, and Murrillio slays him, which brings Coll back to promise. Lady Simtal is Turban's wife, and I guess another despicable character here. She's sleeping around, I guess for information, or just because she be sleeping around. Whatever, to each their own. Either way, this greasy, grimy woman gets cast aside in the end when she's got literally no relevance. And in the case of minor female characters, we have also Challice Diarl. And although I thought and had higher hopes for her and her character, she too ended up being a greasy, grimy chica. There really was nothing there between her and Crokus, so I don't totally blame her, but she did play him like a fool for sure. Maybe she was pretending that she didn't realize how obsessed the guy was with her. You have Vorkan, you have Circlebreaker, you have Ocelot. It was just so many names bouncing around that had no depth behind them. By the time they have sometimes like pretty important interactions in the story, but I just don't even remember who they are. And then you have Crone, the great raven from Moonspawn. Crone gives you some laughs. She's the messenger between Rake and Baruk in the early going, and she still takes part watching and again is another agent of relaying the information that's going on throughout the story. So yeah, definitely missed characters here. I'm not going to be surprised if I didn't. That's the gist of the character breakdown. And so my final thoughts here. This is such a massive book. I probably in the future promise you to put a little more formal thought into how I develop this video and get it a little more structured so it makes sense. But there's a lot to take in. And what I mean by that is you need to understand each character. You don't have to know all of their intentions or motivations. Take Rake, great character, had no idea what he was thinking. But as a reader, you're putting all these complicated pieces together and you keep getting samples of information. The Hounds, you have no idea what a Moonspawn is. You have no idea what Warrens are. This lasts far too long into the book. It almost made it feel like he's being difficult to be difficult. Hey, look at how many characters I can introduce. Look, I read Wheel of Time. There's a million characters, but I don't find it impressive for you to just throw name after name at me. I would like some backstory to the characters I'm dealing with. If you get to the Assassin's Guilds later on, it's like, okay, I don't have any connection to these people. And I get when you're first starting a new section and you first meet a character, you want to build that connection. There was no opportunity to. Before you even understand what's going on, you're still jumping to the next character. It was enough for me to be like, okay, Rallick is here, Crokus is here, he's going with here, I'm trying, and I'm not gonna go back and reread this thing. I wanna truck on to book 2. And the reason I wanna truck on to book 2, because at the end of the day, it was still good. You have a magic system you're barely exposing me to, but I want more, right? You have an ancient history that you're barely exposing me to, but I want more. Because as a reader, you can only focus on one thing at a time. Is it character development or is it story development and world building? If you try to do too much of that at the same time over and over again, things are gonna get lost. What will carry me on to book 2 is the fact that there are characters that I still enjoy that are still alive. The whole series is Malazan Book of the Fallen, so we'll see how this empire, I guess, rises and falls over the course of 10 books. Volume 1. We got a ways to go. The battling at the end was just so sick. It was so sick. I think that's what brought it from like maybe even a below average read to like kind of cool and awesome. I'm gonna give it a 5.66. 5.66. That feels right. That feels right. It just, to me, there was so much more that could have been done to make this awesome and make the characters likable and make everything more seamless. And it's absolutely dumbfounding me that it took 10 years to get this published and it feels like he didn't edit it once. But what about you? Did you like this one? Should I keep going? Is the series worth it? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this review or my rambling, it really was rambling, I'm sorry. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. And if you want to see me power on to book 2, because I am going to, why don't you subscribe, because eventually that'll come out too. And remember folks, a chapter a day keeps the brain rot away. Although in this case, I don't know, my brain's pretty scrambled. Adios.